I'm 81 years old, and I need to tell you something that's going to make every financial advisor in America furious with me. I retired at 62 with exactly $147,000. Not rich, but comfortable. Enough, they said. Enough to live modestly, travel a little, die with dignity. That's what the spreadsheets promised. That's what the retirement calculators said. 19 years later, I'm sitting here with $5.2 million, and I didn't win the lottery. I didn't inherit money. I didn't get lucky with crypto or meme stocks or any of that nonsense. I did something much simpler and much more terrifying than any of that. I stopped listening to people who'd never done what I was trying to do. My name is Frank. I'm 81 years old, and I'm about to tell you how to 5x your retirement money, not by following the rules, by breaking every single one of them. You think you know how retirement works. You've been told the same lie I was told for 40 years. Save diligently, invest conservatively, withdraw 4% per year, don't take risks, play it safe, die with most of your money still in the account so your ungrateful children can fight over it. That's not a retirement plan. That's a slow death disguised as financial responsibility. And I followed it exactly for 1 year, one miserable, soul-crushing, financially stupid year. And then I woke up, looked at my dwindling account, looked at my empty days, and realized I had a choice. I could die rich and bored, or I could risk everything and actually live. I chose risk, and it made me richer than safety ever could. Let me tell you exactly how I did it. Every detail, every mistake, every terrifying decision that turned $1 million into $5 million while everyone told me I was insane. June 2005. I'm 62 years old. I've worked for Procter & Gamble for 37 years, started in the warehouse, worked my way up to regional logistics manager. Good salary, better benefits, maxed out my 401k every year since they started offering it. My wife Ellen and I had been planning retirement since we were in our 40s. We had spreadsheets, color-coded spreadsheets. Our financial advisor was a guy named Martin Holbrook. Worked for one of those big firms with marble lobbies and leather chairs. Martin was 41 years old, which should have been my first clue. He'd never been retired, not for one day, but he was very confident about how I should spend the next 20 years of my life. Frank, he said across his massive desk with family photos positioned just so, you've done everything right. You have $147,000. Conservatively invested with a 4% withdrawal rate, that's $41,180 per year, plus your Social Security of approximately $28,000. You're looking at $70,000 annually. Very comfortable retirement. I asked him about inflation. He waved his hand like I'd farted in church. The portfolio is balanced for moderate growth. You'll be fine. I asked him, what if we wanted to travel more, do things while we were still healthy enough to do them? There's a plan for that, he said. Small splurges, budgeted quarterly. The key is discipline. Discipline. I'd been disciplined for 37 years. I'd worked 50-hour weeks. I'd missed my kids' baseball games and dance recitals because I was being disciplined, building this nest egg, doing everything right. And now Martin, who drove a leased BMW and had never missed a single thing because he was at the office, was telling me to keep being disciplined for another 20 years so I could die with money in the bank. I thanked him, shook his hand, walked out of that office, and never went back. The first year of retirement was exactly what Martin promised: comfortable, safe, soul-destroying. Ellen and I lived on $70,000. We took one trip, a cruise to Alaska, the kind where you're trapped on a boat with 3,000 other retirees, eating buffet food and listening to a comedian who was funny in 1987. We came home, we watched a lot of television, we visited the grandkids twice, we had dinner with friends who were also retired and also bored and also pretending this was the dream. I was dying, not physically, worse. I was dying of nothing, dying of safety, dying of sitting on a porch, watching my account balance very slowly, very predictably, very boringly grow at 6% per year, while my body very quickly, very unpredictably, very terrifyingly fell apart. That's when I had my first heart attack. Small one. The doctor called it a warning shot. I called it a wake-up call. I was 63 years old. I'd been retired for 1 year. I'd spent that year being careful with money I'd earned so I could have freedom. But I wasn't free. I was imprisoned by spreadsheets and 4% withdrawal rates and fear. I came home from the hospital and I said to Ellen, "We're doing this wrong." "Doing what wrong?" she said. "All of it. Retirement, money, life. We saved for 40 years so we could live carefully for 20 more? That's insane." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But heart attacks have a way of clarifying things. "What are you saying, Frank?" "I'm saying we have $1 million. We could lose half of it and still have more than most people. Why are we acting like we're broke?" "Because we could run out," she said, fear in her voice. Real fear. The same fear I'd been carrying for a year. "Or," I said, "we could turn it into more and actually use it while we're still alive to enjoy it." That's when I asked myself the question that changed everything. What am I actually trying to do with this money? Here's what nobody tells you about retirement planning. The entire system is designed around one assumption: you're going to fail. You're going to overspend, make bad decisions, be irresponsible. So they build in all these rules to protect you from yourself. 4% withdrawal rate, conservative allocation. Don't touch the principal. Treat your life savings like a bomb that might explode if you move it wrong. And maybe for some people that's necessary. But I'd been responsible my entire life. I'd worked since I was 15 years old. I'd never missed a mortgage payment. I'd never carried credit card debt. I'd saved 15% of every paycheck for 37 years. I wasn't the problem. The system treating me like I was the problem. That was the problem. So I started asking different questions. Not, how do I make this money last? But how do I make this money grow while I'm still young enough to enjoy it? Not, what's the safest investment? But what's the smartest risk? Not, how do I avoid losing money? But what am I losing by being too careful? I started reading, not the retirement guides written by financial advisors who make money whether you do or not. The books written by people who'd actually built wealth, the unglamorous, boring, proven stuff, real estate, small businesses, dividend stocks that nobody talks about because they're not sexy. And I started talking to people who'd done what I wanted to do, not Martin in his marble lobby, people who'd retired with money and actually grown it. They were harder to find because successful retirees don't write books or give seminars. They're too busy living. But I found them: coffee shops, Rotary Club meetings, the guy who owned the hardware store. I asked questions, I listened, and I heard the same thing over and over. The money you're too afraid to use is the money you'll regret not using. The best investments are the ones financial advisors won't touch because the commissions aren't worth their time. Rich people and broke people think about money the same way. Middle-class people, they're the only ones who think being careful with money makes you wealthy. It doesn't. It makes you middle class until you die. That last one was from a guy named Warren, not Buffett. Warren Kowalski owned a plumbing company, sold it, retired with $800,000, now had several million. Lives in the same house, drives a 2003 Ford, doesn't act rich because he's not trying to look rich, he's just rich. I asked him how he did it. He said, "I stopped thinking like I was on a fixed income. Fixed income is a poverty mindset and expensive clothing. I started thinking like a business owner who happens to be old." That sentence changed my life. Here's what I did with my $1 million, step by step, the exact playbook. First, I fired Martin, called him up, said I was taking control of my own money. He warned me about risk, about volatility, about how people my age shouldn't be making aggressive moves. I thanked him for his concern and hung up. Second, I broke my money into buckets. This is crucial. You cannot think of your retirement money as one big pot. That's how you get paralyzed. Bucket 1, $250,000. This was my don't be stupid money. Ultra safe, high-yield savings accounts, treasury bonds, the boring stuff. This covered 2 years of living expenses at our current lifestyle. This was the money that let me sleep at night while I did risky things with the rest. Bucket 2, $400,000. This was my grow it slow money. Dividend aristocrats, companies that have increased dividends for 25-plus consecutive years. AT&T, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, my old company, Coca-Cola. Not sexy, but they pay you every quarter and the stock price grows steadily. I built a portfolio that paid me $22,000 per year in dividends. Real money deposited into my account 4 times a year, regardless of what the market did. Bucket 3, $200,000. This was my get my hands dirty money, real estate, small business investments, the stuff Martin would have had a stroke over. Bucket 4, $147,000. This was my be dumb while I'm smart money, the buffer, the emergency fund, the money that wasn't invested at all, just sitting there in case I screwed up everything else. People thought I was insane. Ellen thought I was having a prolonged psychological episode related to the heart attack. My son Jeffrey, who worked in finance, actually staged an intervention. Dad, you're 63 years old. You can't afford to take risks like this. Actually, I said, I can't afford not to. I could live another 25 years. You know what inflation does to a fixed $70,000 over 25 years? It turns it into poverty. But if I lose half, I still have more than most people retire with. If I win, I have enough to actually live, not just exist. Live. He walked out shaking his head. Didn't speak to me for 3 months. Let me tell you about the first investment I made with that $200,000 get my hands dirty money, because this is where everything changed. There was a duplex for sale 3 blocks from where Ellen and I lived. Nice neighborhood, good schools, the kind of place where people stayed for years. The duplex was a mess, needed work. The owner had died, his kids lived out of state, they just wanted it gone. Asking price, $185,000. I called the listing agent, offered $165,000 cash. They accepted in 2 days. My son Jeffrey lost his mind. Dad, you just put 16% of your retirement into a building that needs $30,000 of repairs. Yes, I said. And when those repairs are done, it'll rent for $1,800 per month, per side. That's $3,600 per month, $43,200 per year on a $195,000 investment. That's a 22% return. Martin was promising me 6%. But what if you can't find tenants? Then I'll learn something about being a landlord, I said. I spent 3 months fixing that duplex, me and Ellen mostly. I did the painting, basic repairs, things I'd learned from my dad 50 years ago and never used. Ellen did the design, made it look like a place people would want to live, not a rental that felt like punishment. We rented both sides in 2 weeks. Good tenants, Section 8 on one side, young couple on the other, both paid on time. I managed it myself, saved the property management fees. That $43,200 per year, after expenses, taxes, repairs, that was about $28,000 net. Real money, coming in monthly, completely separate from my other investments. I was 64 years old and I had a job again, except this time the job worked for me instead of the other way around. Over the next 3 years, I bought 4 more properties, not all at once, carefully, using cash flow from the first duplex to fund down payments on the others, using the dividends from my stock portfolio to cover repairs, building slowly, deliberately, but always building. By the time I was 67, I had 5 rental properties generating $11,000 per month in gross rent, about $90,000 net per year after all expenses. My stock portfolio was still growing, dividends still coming in. I hadn't touched the principal of anything. My safe bucket of $250,000 had grown to $310,000 just sitting there earning 5% in boring accounts. My dividend portfolio had grown to $520,000, paying me $28,000 per year. My real estate portfolio was worth approximately $1.1 million, generating $90,000 per year, plus Social Security of $28,000. Total net worth, approximately $2 million total annual income, approximately $146,000. I'd more than doubled my money in 5 years, while actually living, while traveling, while working on properties and learning, and being alive instead of sitting on the porch waiting to die. But here's the thing, I could have stopped there, declared victory. Most people would have. Most financial advisors would have said, Frank, you won. Stop risking it. I didn't stop because I'd learned something crucial. The money that grows the fastest is the money you're actively involved with, not passive investing, active, hands dirty, skin in the game. The second question I had to ask myself came when I was 68 years old. Ellen and I were having coffee with another retired couple, Jim and Linda. They were complaining about their fixed income, how everything was getting more expensive, how they wished they'd saved more. Jim had retired the same year I did with about the same amount. He'd followed Martin's playbook exactly. 7 years later, he had about $1.1 million, growing steadily, safely, boringly, at 6% per year. He was living on $50,000 per year and feeling squeezed. I had $2 million and was living on $146,000 per year and feeling like I was just getting started. Same starting point, totally different outcome. And I realized the difference wasn't luck, it was philosophy. Jim was protecting his money, I was deploying it. Jim was asking, how do I make this last? I was asking, how do I make this work? That's when the second question hit me. What would I do with this money if I wasn't afraid? Because fear was still there. Every time I bought a property, fear. Every time I moved money out of savings into an investment, fear. Every time Jeffrey called to tell me I was being reckless, fear. But I'd learned to recognize that fear for what it was, not wisdom, not caution, just fear. And fear is the worst investment advisor on the planet. If I wasn't afraid, what would I do? The answer came immediately. I'd start a business. I know what you're thinking. You're 68 years old, Frank. You're supposed to be winding down, not starting up. That's exactly what everyone said. Ellen, Jeffrey, my friends. The guy at the hardware store who I'd been talking to about real estate told me I was pushing my luck. But here's what they didn't understand. I wasn't trying to build the next Amazon. I wasn't trying to compete with 25-year-olds working 80-hour weeks. I was trying to do something simple, profitable, and completely unsexy. I started a property maintenance company. I already had 5 rental properties. I was already managing them. I was already hiring plumbers, electricians, handymen, landscapers. I was already the middleman. Why not formalize it? Let me tell you about the first investment I made with that $200,000 get my hands dirty money, because this is where everything changed. There was a duplex for sale 3 blocks from where Ellen and I lived. Nice neighborhood, good schools, the kind of place where people stayed for years. The duplex was a mess, needed work. The owner had died, his kids lived out of state, they just wanted it gone. Asking price, $185,000. I called the listing agent, offered $165,000 cash. They accepted in 2 days. My son Jeffrey lost his mind. Dad, you just put 16% of your retirement into a building that needs $30,000 of repairs. Yes, I said. And when those repairs are done, it'll rent for $1,800 per month. Per side. That's $3,600 per month, $4,200 per year. On a $195,000 investment. That's a 22% return. Martin was promising me 6%. But what if you can't find tenants?